Everyone, and thank you for joining. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm very excited to be joined by some speakers from Workato, and they are going to talk about how they've leveraged APQC's process classification framework. It's a really cool story, so I'm excited to have them here. But before we jump in, let me do a quick introduction. We have Bharat, who is a serial entrepreneur and a seasoned executive with 25 years of experience in strategy, sales, and business development, digital solutions, customer success, and more. Currently, he is the SVP of Strategic Initiatives at Workato. Additionally, we have Hussein, who is a tech leader and a business strategist. He has extensive experience in leading strategic initiatives and mission-critical programs from concept to rollout. He's currently the Senior Director of Automation Strategy and Value at Workato. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and I'm excited to hear your story today.
Thank you so much, Mary, and welcome all. Let's get started. This briefly about me and also Hussein, who is joining me as well. So we both will be taking through the journey of how we have actually used APQC's process classification framework in the way that we kind of built out something which is very, very interesting. Just about a kind of quick fun fact about me. I mean, I've worked in all across the globe, and except for Antarctica. That's the only thing that I'm actually waiting for to kind of go and sell there. But that said, when I also have 2 MBAs in addition to what Maddie was mentioning. I was not sharp enough to kind of get everything from a business school in the first MBA, so I had to go and do the second one. So that's what I did it. And then Workato, when I joined Workato about 5 years back, and right from almost the beginning of the journey together with Workato to kind of drive the various initiatives in various capacities. And one of the things that I initiated about a couple of years back is this initiative which is called as the Automation Strategy and Value, and that's where Hussein and team came into the fold. Working with me to kind of go and kind of help build this entire framework, which is what we want to kind of share with you. First thing first, we'll go through Workato. What is Workato, and then introducing Workato to you very briefly. And I'll just take about 2 to 3 minutes to kind of introduce Workato very briefly, what we do, and then go into the facet of how did we kind of build up the framework that we are talking about using the PCF, right? So Workato is a company which is about 10 years old, founded in 2013. Its focus area is actually kind of working in the enterprise orchestration area, right? And so what I mean by that is, think of this, right? So when you talk about any business process flows or the workflows, you do need to kind of bring what I call as the data, process, and experiences together, right? Sometimes it is data, sometimes it is integrating the systems, sometimes it is actually kind of stitching the workflows together, and which is what we probably have been dealing with day in and day out. And Workato is that orchestration platform that brings up all of these together in a very, very unique way, right? So started in 2013 by the founding team, which actually came in from multiple places, all the way from building products like TIBCO, Salesforce, Oracle, Amazon. They kind of got in and then said when the way that the products are built with respect to heavy duty deployment and how do you kind of bring with the heavy duty configuration side of the story. So they didn't want to have that. So they kind of completely went on a mission to kind of undo that, and that's how Workato was born, right? And we work with multiple customers across the board, big, small, large enterprises, etc. All of that stuff in various areas, all the way from transforming them in the areas of be it customer experience automations, be it employee experience automations, supplier operations, front office and back office, all the areas covered together. We do that spanning across the globe. Workato has presence in the US primarily, and in Europe, Singapore, Philippines, India, ANZ, Japan, all across the globe. So it's a global company. We're about roughly about 800 people company, which is widely spread across, and that's what Workato is all about in brief, right? But that said, quickly going into what Workato does from a technical standpoint and from a technology standpoint as a platform, it has wide varieties of capabilities that actually kind of are brought to the bear to kind of help the customers the way that they can actually go take the business and automate themselves, right? So it's a low-code, no-code platform, pretty much that you can actually go and kind of use it if anybody who is a business analyst or a business person or even an IT person as well, who understands the business process, they can actually go and kind of construct something like a kind of like a visual-based way of actually kind of stitching the workflows which we call as recipes. Recipes is a basic concept that we use when it's actually kind of you're building a recipe is what we kind of we kind of do that. But multiple features into it. It can actually kind of be used to kind of go to do the data integrations, which is the traditional iPaaS, which is the integration platform as a service. And then you could do kind of data pipelining, which is like the ELT or ETL type of data pipelining movement. You could also kind of go over and do the process workflows, which is a human in the loop type and BPM, lightweight BPM types. You could also kind of go over and then do the workflow apps as well, where you can actually build lightweight apps to kind of go and kind of put a front face to the process flows that you're actually kind of building up. So large variety of capabilities that the platform brings together for the customers, and customers use it in wide varieties of things. And recently we launched even the Workato Copilot that will help our customers to kind of building the recipes on their own, right? So like kind of using the Copilot to kind of, which is predominantly AI driven, and then you can with a human guided way of dealing with the building of the recipes as well. So that's in short about Workato as a platform. So both the technology and the company, and then let's kind of dive into the next set of the things, and I'll shift the gears a little bit, right? So having said that, Workato is an enterprise orchestration platform, and then from November 22 onwards, you guys have been seeing largely in terms of what is actually happening in the market with respect to the AI, and then what the generative AI has been kind of kicking up. So when you kind of look at these, right? So the profound changes, fundamentally, when you think about which you have been probably exposed to or interacting with, right? ChatGPT came in and said, like, which kind of gave two different things. One, first thing which is there is it gave the possibilities for every one of us that you could actually kind of use the AI in a way it needs to be used in its own for your own business, for your own personal use, right? It kind of democratized the way of dealing with it, and it also kind of made it available for the masses. Now, when that happened, there is also underlying thing that more profound happened. ChatGPT is a conversational interface. But what is more profound, if you go to think out a little bit, is the amount of the modeling that is actually gone in, which is what it calls the large language models, which is the LLMs. That is the biggest asset of the brain behind the thing, right? To kind of go and kind of power the entire conversational interface from the way that you're actually kind of looking at it. So that aspect of the LLMs, or the explosion of the LLMs that actually happened, like not just one LLM, but LLMs that can be used across the business, and I'll give some examples as well, which you'll be able to kind of comprehend what I'm talking about as well. These LLMs, what I term as like the digital brains, right? These digital brains are the ones that kind of are very, very prevalent in terms of the business operations. And then you could use those as a part of your business processes to kind of drive the business, which you probably would have never have seen that in the way that it could be run, right? So that's the most profound impact that the LLMs have actually kind of created. Now, when that happened, the very first thing that we kind of put back and look and say, we are an automation company, we provide our enterprise orchestration platform to kind of automate the business processes. So we looked at it and said, like, what is going to kind of change, and how the business operations are going to change with the entire AI and the generative AI that you can actually kind of bring to the business operations? How will this change? The fundamental shift that is going to happen that we said was like three different things. One thing which we said was, one, you're actually kind of bringing the business and the technology together as one unison to kind of drive this thinking process of how to embrace AI into the business process. That's the first point. Second point, which is there, is you actually kind of look at more in terms of these LLMs, or the digital brains, becoming the co-pilots, not co-pilot as in like the technology-driven co-pilot, but a co-pilot for the business itself that you can actually go drive the business. Like, for example, a simple thing, right? Think of this. Previously, if you're running a contract processing, think of how do you do the contract processing? You receive an order or a contract, and you kind of process it through, look at the legal requirements, look at the entire contract document, read through it, figure out what the risk is, and etc., and then kind of go through the entire workflow of the process, right? But imagine if you had a way of actually kind of throwing all these contracts into a digital brain and an LLM, a contract brain, and the contract brain comes up and then says that out of the 50,000 contracts that you have, you can actually go and pop up and say that a risk exposure of like 5 contracts is going to be completely different, and you got to go and deal with that, right? So that actually changes the way that you do the business. And that is the profound impact of what AI can do. And that is exactly what we term, from Workato's perspective, as AI squared enterprises. Let me define what is an AI squared enterprise, and kind of you'll understand what I'm talking about it, right? AI squared enterprise is something that bringing in AI and automation together into into an enterprise to transform their entire business for the growth and increasing the efficiencies and increasing resiliencies, right? So the way that you kind of think about it is like when you're kind of handling the process like in a business process in a certain fashion, maybe a first out type of process in the contracts. But then once you kind of bring in the AI and automation together, you completely change in terms of like how you process the contracts as well, right? So that way of dealing with it and completely kind of rethinking the entire way of how you conduct the business operations, and by bringing and leveraging, exploiting rather the AI and automation together in an enterprise, that is how we define and determine AI squared enterprises. Now, that is great. So you can actually go think about AI squared enterprises, and you want to go and transform into an AI squared enterprise. But how? The way that we kind of came up is like if you want to go and do the transformation from where you are to become an AI squared enterprise, you have to have three different things. First things first, you got to have a platform or a technology that can get to take you to that place. That's exactly what the Workato platform does. The second thing which we also kind of realized is a mindset shift that needs to happen. The mindset is something that you got to go and change in terms of like various aspects of how do you kind of get the change in terms of transforming from where you are from a current state to a future state, which is an AI squared enterprise. And that mindset, our CEO has actually written a book, which is called the New Automation Mindset book. You can go and find it on Amazon, etc., whatever it is, right? So to kind of get an idea of that book. But the third and important piece is the process of transformation, which is the methodology of transformation, right? And that is what we're going to talk about today. And then we're going to talk about a part of that today to kind of deep dive into it, and then kind of show the way we used PCF in a very exciting way, right? The methodology is very simple. It is reimagine, rewire, and reinforce. That's the methodology. That's where the three R's are actually kind of coming into play. And reimagination is about in terms of your current process, like I said, the contract, the way that you've been doing the contract process, the way that you've been doing, how can you reimagine the entire business with the AI and the automation together in a way that has been not seen ever before, right? So that's the part of the reimagination exercise. Rewiring is once you reimagine, you have to rewire the business. Using a platform like Workato, you could be able to rewire within a jiffy to kind of go rewire the entire business. Reinforcing is once you kind of rewire the business, how do you kind of instate the change and scale that change with a set of frameworks and tools? So for this session and purpose, we'll focus on the reimagine piece of it. Now, this methodology, what we call as AI squared methodology, and like the book talks about these three different mindsets, and the AI integrated enterprise is what the AI squared enterprise, and reimagine is one of the elements of the methodology, which is what we're going to talk about. Right? Now, a simple thing, right? Reimagining of the business is not new. It's been happening quite extensively, very well, right? So right from the days of where the transformation was actually happening. Let me give you some examples. Amazon and Walmart, it actually reimagined the way that e-commerce has been done, like when the digital commerce has been done. Betterment and Schwab, it reimagined entirely in terms of how do you do the wealth management, right? Netflix and HBO reimagined the way that you can actually kind of watch the movies, get the entertainment in your couch, in your room, right? That's basically the streaming. Now, Shuttle and XPO Logistics, these actually have reimagined the entire way of what is called as LTL, which is less than truckload in freight business. How do you transport that, and how do you optimize that? Right? That's AI-powered LTL freight shipping, right? And then Tesla and John Deere. I'll actually kind of put a question mark here and then request for a poll. Let's see what you think about just like Amazon, Walmart, e-commerce. What's Betterment and Schwab, it's wealth management. What's a commonality between Tesla and John Deere? And I just want to point this, the extent of reimagination that you can actually go and kind of do, right? So out of the four, you could actually kind of choose which one you feel like, what is the commonality between these? Like of course, it's a bit of a tricky question, and it's also kind of a little bit of a mind-numbing question as well. I just wanted to make sure that you're not passively attending, and then kind of a little bit of mind twist as well to make it a little bit interesting. Okay, so it's interesting. You see the recharging brakes, silent mode, mood is, and none of the above. And I see recharging brakes as like on the top. You know, very interesting thought process. But let me kind of give you the commonality between Tesla and John Deere. I mean, what's extending commonality between those, right? And by the way, you can Google it, and I guarantee you that John Deere is not making Tesla like Tesla type electric cars or SUVs, and Tesla is not making just like like excavation equipment, just like John Deere, right? So they're not kind of eventually each of the business. But when you start kind of thinking about what has actually kind of gone in, what has been transformed. Tesla transformed fundamentally not the electric vehicle. Tesla transformed the way that that 60-year-old dealership network that has been there in the automotive industry, that is no more with Tesla. That's a commonality. So when you go and look at from that perspective, right? So dealerless networks is the commonality when you look at this, and that is a significant thing in terms of when you kind of reimagine what you could do. John Deere could go and reimagine, and John Deere has been thinking about it in terms of how do dealers play into the whole thing, right? And that is that is a big thing in terms of how you kind of drive the imagination piece to it, right? Let me just kind of get to it. So how do you reimagine? Like when you kind of like reimagining the business, is there an interesting way? Is there a process and a method and madness to the madness method, so to say, right? Yes, and that is one of the things with an automation lens you can actually go think about it. Here is an automation maturity model that authored a paper about like 3 years back when ChatGPT, LLMs, and everything was not even existent, right? The idea was when you kind of talk about automating the business process to the large extent, automation is a kind of complete spectrum. It's a large spectrum. So level one being like a simple set of automating the tasks, which is like kind of a popping from one form to other form, which is like what extensively people technologies like RPA do, and which is where it extensively flares very, very well, right? So that's at level one, which is the task automation. Level two is what I talked about, like when bringing the data together, like when the integration tools that erstwhile integration tools, they existed and that they do it very well. Level three is thanks to Salesforce. When Salesforce came in with a SaaS application, the explosion of apps happened, and orchestrating those apps became an important thing. And then the APIs also kind of came into play, and that's where the level three comes into play. Level four is end-to-end business process orchestration, right? So you kind of tie it back and kind of do the workflow management with the human in the loop types, which are the BPMs like the likes of the Pega and whatnot, which most of you people would probably be exposed to, to kind of like say automating the entire procure-to-pay process, automating the entire order-to-cash process, things like that. Level five is an interesting thing. That is where the AI kind of comes into play. And what I kind of visualized was, you could actually kind of, once you kind of automate the entire end-to-end process, you can actually go and automate the business decisioning itself. For example, a simple thing like safety decision making in a mining scenario, that you can actually kind of completely change it using the DL, which is deep learning techniques, which is what the next level of the things that when LLMs kind of used it to drive and ingrain the knowledge in terms of like what they have been trained to, and then come back with the recommendations of like what you do, what going to go into. That's what the automating the business decisions is all about. Level 6 is aspirational from a end-to-end, like when running a business like an autopilot of Tesla. That is what it is, right? So think about this. This is a path to kind of travel forward. If you're reimagining the entire thing from a business perspective with the context of the AI, which is the level 5, and bringing in all the decisioning factors that you do want to kind of completely reimagine the way that you've been doing the business. It takes a very intentional effort. And in fact, I just want to kind of talk about this 30 seconds and then kind of pass it on to Hussein, who will take you the details of what that reimagination framework would look like and where the PCF came to us, right? And in terms of like an idea of PCF came to us. interestingly, it is a 2-year journey for us. When we started kind of like saying that, I mean, how do we kind of take the customers on this journey about kind of getting them to mature in the automation process? As a part of that, there's like multiple sets of things that are actually put together, which is basically the maturity mode, and then which the other one, which is called the towers of automation framework, and the circles of impact, where you kind of lead in with impact and what or whatnot. Right? We kind of talk about all of those to kind of bring it to fruition. There's a paper that is available when you can actually go and search on Workato, that you can actually download and read it, and that is. But it talks about length and detail in terms of all these different types of frameworks. And we were building this in terms of taking to the customers, how do we kind of drive them and help them with this fascinating transformation path, right? As we were doing that, we kind of got stuck with one important problem, which is basically how do you kind of go and standardize it across to talk to different businesses, right? And then as a part of doing that, thanks to the team and Hussein and team, where they kind of looked at it, the entire aspects of it, and the frameworks that we were kind of looking at it, and that's where we kind of stepped on to APQC's process classification framework, which kind of goes in detail about how the process gets classified and what the classification framework looks like. And we kind of use that in a way that has not been used ever before, in terms of, not as a standard method, but we kind of use that to kind of reverse engineer a little bit to kind of define how do you kind of calculate the impact and how do you kind of build this framework to a full reimagination journey. With that, I invite Hussein to take you further into the details of the reimagination journey. Hussein, all yours.
Sure. Thanks, Bharat. And I think that dovetails very well into the next slide. That is reimagining with the towers of automation. So based on our experience, as Bharat was talking about, with so many customers, we know that while going through the reimagination journey, organizations often struggle with the question of where to start. Because the Workato platform enables enterprise-wide automation, Workato sought to support its customers with a methodology that would allow them to answer this question with a robust top-down strategy and an execution roadmap that aligns to their business goal, thus helping them identify key automations that can potentially drive a huge impact across the value chain of the business. While we understand that the value chains for each business and industry may not be exactly the same, most fall under these 5 towers of automation that you see on the screen. Each towers drive different KPIs for the business, whether it be productivity, efficiency, or revenue. What to automate first depends on the enterprise business objective and expected outcomes. In fact, to develop this methodology, Workato needed a way to provide a bird's eye view of all processes across the enterprise, to understand all of the automation possibilities and the impact that you can have across the business. We needed a framework that would allow Workato and its customers see the whole thing of business. And there was nothing better for that than the APQC's process classification framework, or PCF as we call. So we used the PCF as a foundation and framework for building our methodology. In fact, interestingly, we spoke about it and we said we firmly believe if PCF wasn't available, we would not be able to structure and put metrics to the impact of automation in the way that we have. So we created these impact-led reimagination journeys for several of our customers. And for one of the customers, the automation potential across the 5 towers of automation looks like the one on the top right-hand corner. The red are the manual processes, teal is the additional automation potential, grays are the processes that are tough to automate. And for this specific customer, we actually double-click on the employee experience tower of automation, and we were actually once we run the rough order of magnitude, we realized the reimagination journey would be able to bring a potential impact of nearly 5.5 million. And as part of this engagement as well, what we did, we created a roadmap and we identified that the offboarding and onboarding initiative as the first process to deep dive further into. So it would actually bring the maximum impact for the effort spent. So as we move to the next slide, all of this experience of working so closely with so many customers have shaped our thought process, and we realized that all this can be packaged into a very easily accessible interface, and that's how Walnut IQ was born. Since now we had the LLM and ChatGPT type interface, what we did was we threw more data sets at it, not just the knowledge that we garnered through the execution that we have done with automation strategy and value team, but we also reinforce it with 1 million plus public recipe metadata, X-ray, automation data, Gears framework, the new automation mindset, APQC framework, and many more. And the way Walnut IQ works is you ask it a question, it gives you an output that is very high quality and creates informed roadmaps that are specific to your organization. So as we move to the next slide, we actually are going to cherry pick one of the reimagination journey that we did with a customer. And the customer was in the business process services space. And the customer actually had a major offboarding issue. That is, they actually had a 40% attrition that they needed to fix. Imagine offboarding and onboarding 12,000 people company every year. Based on the discussion we had with the customer, we used Walnut IQ to create the rough order of magnitude or art of possible, along with the automation roadmap. And the next two slides actually talk about how the interaction went between the customer and Walnut IQ. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I actually have a dedicated video towards the end that would actually make you understand how Walnut IQ synthesizes all the data and drives this conversation. So I am going to go further. Yes. And this slide, we want to underline a very important facet of reimagination journey. And it's very important for us to understand that it is not static, it's cyclical. And if we talk about measuring the impact of automation, we do an estimate on the impact. We further drill down, we capture the impact. And if we even go further, we're able to measure the realized value. This end-to-end approach, including these 3 steps, have a necessity to have a common nomenclature that bring increased efficiency, deeper productivity, explosive growth, and unrivaled innovation to organization. The framework that you see on the screen is the key to unlocking automation excellence. Much like APQC's process lifecycle, it is continuous because organization can and definitely should return to the discovery phase and identify further opportunities once they have realized value from automation that already have in place. Thus, creating a core foundational framework such as Workato's ASV methodology that integrates critical elements within the organization to realize full business outcomes. Now, let's take a look at how all this comes together and how Walnut IQ synthesizes the collective wisdom of our customer engagement, the AI Square methodology that Bharat spoke about, and APQC's PCF to guide you on your automation journey. And I would request Therlene to click on this video. Awesome. Yes. So that, sorry. All right. So that was an amazing video for you to get an insight of how the Walnut IQ works. And I hope, Bharat and I were able to help you all recognize today that we have a big opportunity to rewrite our future. And you are as excited as we are in terms of what the future holds for all of us. So as we move to the next slide, I just wanted to take this opportunity to mention that the concept and the methodology that you heard from us are highlighted in Workato's CEO, Vijay Stella's new book, The New Automation Mindset. With this, it brings us to the end of the webinar, and I'll hand it back to Maddie and Bharat, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sure, thank you guys for that. The first question we have here, and I want to remind participants on the webinar today to use either the chat or the Q&A function within Zoom to submit those questions, and we will get to them as they come in. So let's start with, how did you come up with this idea of using the PCF as the foundation of your methodology?
Like I said, it was a long journey, right? It was a 2-year journey that we were actually kind of getting through it, right? So the first thing that we kind of looked at was, we're a product company. We provide the product, which is Workato platform, right? As we were going through that, the biggest thing which is there is reimagination is an important aspect. How do you kind of discover and explore the opportunities to kind of go and say, hey, these are the cases where you do want to kind of. And that's how we started off with this automation strategy and value methodology, with the AI squared methodology to kind of come together and say, hey, this is how we could go into that, Maddie. As we were kind of going through that, somewhere during the thing, like I said, the concept of towers of automation. The towers of automation concept is very, very simple. It's about 5 towers that Hussein covered, right? So it's a customer experience tower, employee experience tower, supplier operations, front office, and back office towers. The idea is all the business processes cuts across these towers. And what we wanted to kind of get to, the outcome-wise, is we want to measure the impact. If you were to automate in a certain process, like let's say, for example, procure to pay, what impact does it have on the organization? Now, to go and kind of calculate the impact backwards from that outcome perspective, we had to kind of go and say, like, okay, here are the elements that the process touches in each of these towers, and kind of do the aggregation of the calculation. Now, we were kind of doing that as we kind of we were doing that initial stages working with the customers. We were having difficulties in terms of how do you kind of aggregate this up from a almost a minutest level, if you will, from a L0, L1, L2, L3 type of a thing, to kind of go and kind of start building it up, right? That is when we kind of stepped on to PCF, and PCF gave us a way to kind of go and kind of structure and think about what the process classification framework is. What we did was we took that, and then we took our framework and started kind of mapping, do a kind of almost like a reverse engineering type, right? So we did the entire reverse engineering of the 1,300 the elements of the classification of the PCF that it has, and reverse engineered the entire thing to kind of map it back into the towers of automations of the framework. And there we were able to kind of crack a problem to kind of just go and say, how do you calculate this from the impact standpoint? So it was a bit of a left field, unconventional thinking, and which is what is super exciting about, right? So you go and kind of take the set of the frameworks that it was meant to be. Like usually when I've been kind of exposed to PCF in my past life, but PCF is actually usually meant to be kind of looking and say, here is a standard process. Here is how you would want to look at it. Here is a process excellence way of dealing with it. Here is a benchmark, and go through from a Six Sigma standpoint to kind of go and drive the entire thing. But taking that and kind of turning it upside down and see how do you kind of calculate and extract the business impact, that was like a pretty interesting exercise. It took a while, but we were able to crack that problem. So thanks to Hussein and team, which kind of spent quite a bit of a thing of an exercise, and then took a rap from me in terms of torturing them to kind of come up with all these ideas, and that's how it happened.
That's awesome. A really cool, unique way to use the PCF. It's really cool to hear that. What are the typical roles that empower these enterprise-wide transformations or help drive the reimagination journeys?
Sure. I can actually take that. Sorry, Bharat. Yeah.
No, I was just asking you to go ahead to take it, if you can take it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so I think it's a very interesting question, Maddie. Based on our experience working with so many customers, we understand that impact and enterprise-wide transformation would mean and look very different to different people in the company. However, we have seen like typical roles across the enterprise that empower these reimagination journeys based on the impact zones they are in. And we believe there are actually 3 impact zones in the company. So zone 1 is all about technology transformation. And the typical personas that we come across in this zone are CIOs, business technologists, enterprise architects. And the zone 2 is about operational transformation. And the personas that we come across are CXOs, line of business, business technologists. And zone 3 is about companies' vision about business transformation. And we have seen all these roles across these 3 zones collectively drive a culture of reimagination and enterprise-wide transformation. So to your question, those would be the different personas or the typical roles that we would find.
Great. And then what would you consider the main challenges and obstacles that you have seen companies face while they're going through that reimagination journey?
Oh, that's a very interesting and fantastic question, Maddie. So interestingly, when you think about reimagination, and like that happens in our normal life as well, right? So if you're doing certain sort of things, doing a way that you can take your kid to school at 7 a.m. and then that is a kind of a schedule that you're on. Reimagining completely differently is going to be like a little bit of a mind twist for you to kind of even think about it, right? So when setting, deviating from the existing set of things, right? Just as an example from a normal human life perspective. And this happens extensively in the businesses, right? Because there is a standard way of thinking, right? This is how an order to cash works out. This is how the procure to pay works out. But guess what? Like I kind of showed in the slide, the reimagination of like e-commerce, streaming, etc. Whenever certain set of seismic shifts happen in the industry, what happens is they actually force the business to kind of completely reimagine how they want to kind of do the business. And that is fundamentally, which is what we're going through right now in the era of the Gen AI and the AI side of the story that kind of comes in, and how you could actually kind of change your business. Like just like as an example that I talked about, the contract processing example, right? Or even we take the invoice processing example, right? So you can do lots of varieties of things that you can think about. Now, reimagining is not just sitting in a room and then kind of like meditating and then coming back and saying that this is how then I kind of like find out the reimagination process. But the key thing which you actually kind of look at is like you set the outcome first and say, hey, this is what I want to kind of get to it, and then work backwards from an outcome standpoint and drive the reimagination process. And then in fact, I'll give 3 basic challenges that people go through from a customer standpoint. That's what we have learned from the customer perspective. The challenge number 1 that they kind of get to is like when getting out of the comfort zone in terms of saying that this is 1, 2, 3, when the process looks like this, and then kind of rethinking about and reimagining about like how it could be done with the AI, or in this kind of context of the AI that I'm talking about, in the context of the AI itself. That getting out of the comfort zone is a challenge number 1. Once they get out of the comfort zone, the next thing which is there is, oh, what's going to happen? And I have to kind of redo a whole lot of heavy lifting, a whole lot of things that I've been doing, which is either measuring the KPIs or kind of like metrics, or how do you kind of deal with the MBOs, etc. Those are all the things that need to change, and that is basically the execution hurdles or execution, the hurdles that actually kind of show up in front of the eyes. Right? That's the second challenge. The third challenge of all is like, even if I go and do it, it is actually kind of like, it's not just one. It's actually the whole organization needs to kind of completely change. The mindset has to shift, right? And that's the reason why when you talk about the automation mindset, when we were thinking about this book, when I had both myself and Hussein, we had a very fortunate opportunity to kind of contribute to chapters of this book as well. The title wise, when we were looking at it, was we could have actually said that automation mindset or like kind of a different mindset, etc. But the new automation mindset, the reason the name came in from is basically that the whole organization needs to go through that mindset change and shift. And that shift is imminent. And I think these are the 3 different things that I see as a top level challenges. But of course, when there are like, if you kind of break it down and kind of like, double click and dive into each of these, there'll be tons of things. And that's where reimagination and kind of redesigning the way that you are doing it is a difficult thing. Going through the transformation process is a difficult thing. For example, think of this, right? I'll give a very concrete example. Sears, which was the master of cataloging way back in early 1900s, right? So it actually created the catalog marketing. It actually created the category of cataloging, right? But that itself kind of, the irony of that is it evaporated for the digital catalog that Amazon created. And in fact, when Amazon is a digital catalog, there's nothing bigger than anything else if you kind of go and minimize the entire thing out. But completely reimagining for the way that they could have done the business, Sears had an opportunity to go and take it up, but they did not. Amazon prevailed. On the other context, I'll give it the same thing for Walmart. Walmart could have actually kind of like when given their like strategy about EDLP and EDLC, which is everyday low price and everyday low cost, they could have actually kind of completely gone out of the business, but they kind of reimagined the entire thing and became inexorable to a large extent, almost kind of competing like a titan with Amazon. So two different contrasting cases, but that's what is a everyday affair, and then in terms of actually kind of transforming as a business by itself.
Great. Okay. I have a question. You talked about organizations being ready for automation and changing the mindset, and that makes me think a lot about change management. And so one thing organizations typically do before change is possibly do a change readiness assessment. So how do organizations know if they're ready for automation? I mean, it's such a big concept and it's such a trending topic right now, but not everybody's ready. So how do you know if your organization should be automating something?
I have a simple answer for that. I can very, very straight answer, right? If you're not ready, you'll perish. That's a magnitude of the shift that is actually happening. If the magnitude was a little bit like when I'll give other set of shifts, like for example, like digital banking, right? That was not of this magnitude, right? Even people did not know did not do digital banking, they still survive. Lloyd's still survives, right? And they kind of get it on. You take like a Barclays still kind of survives on, right? So there's like Bank of America still survives on, but this thing in terms of where the AI and automation as an explosive combination that is changing the business, there's nothing about readiness, right? Either you are in or you're out, and that's a simple answer. But that said, when I know where the question is coming in, so let's kind of dig a little bit deeper, right? Where does this readiness come in? Readiness comes in more in terms of for you as a business to be able to kind of go and say, here is where I am as a current state. Where is the future state that I actually want to go to? Right? That future state is what will drive the readiness. And that actually is also a kind of a factor of the gaps that exist in the current way of dealing with the business that exposes the gaps. So it's actually kind of like it's a two for lack of a better term, right?
Yes, no, that makes sense. Okay, we're getting ready to close out here. Do you guys have any last pieces of advice or anything for anyone that is embarking on their automation journey that you'd like to share?
And I have two pieces of very critical things that I talk about to every single customer that we talk about and embarking them on their automation and journey, right? First and fundamental things is automation is not just for efficiencies. You can do it for efficiencies, and think about saying that okay, instead of doing with 30 people, I can do it with 5 people. They can do it with 100 people. Instead of that, you can do it with 20 people. So that's one way of thinking. It's not just for efficiencies. Think of this as a trigger point for innovating your business models. That's a fundamental thing, right? That kind of changes the entire attitude and the previous question about the mindset and whatnot. That's the first thing, right? That's an important aspect. The second thing which is there is when you're reimagining your businesses, you got to go and look at very different things. Like when it's not about doing the businesses like of the competitor that you're doing. Like if Walmart is Amazon, imagine reimagining the business. It's not just about reimagining how Amazon is doing the business. You can actually go and look at it in terms of how an allied industry, a very different industry. For example, a simple thing, right? Like how a medical supplies company like a Cardinal would actually kind of completely do the business the same way from a supply chain track and trace standpoint. You could actually borrow that from them. So that cross-industry borrowing is an important aspect. Like you can go widen the aperture to kind of reimagine the business. That widening the aperture is very important. That's the second point.
Those are great points. Hussein, any closing thoughts for us?
No, I think Bharat summed it pretty well. So nothing from my side.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone again for attending the webinar today, and thank you Barath and Hussein for presenting. It was very insightful. As a reminder, everyone will receive a copy of the slides and recording via email within a few days. Don't forget to take our webinar satisfaction survey before you hit that X. Let us know what you thought. And then don't forget to register for upcoming webinars and events and roundtables as well via www.apqc.org/events. And we do have opportunities for you to share your story, much like we heard today. So reach out to us and share that story. Thank you everyone for joining. Don't forget to connect with us on social and have a great rest of your day.